Hey everybody, this is Ron, and today I'm going to be reviewing Black Colossus. This is a Conan novelette written by Robert E. Howard, and it was first published in an issue of Weird Tales in 1933. This is probably the most epic Conan story that I've read so far. I've read and reviewed 6 stories so far before this one, and you can check them out in my Conan playlist. So this story starts out in a really interesting way. When I got a few paragraphs in, I thought I was reading a different story. I didn't think it was a Conan story because it opens with a thief named Shevatas, and he's basically doing a bit of treasure hunting. I thought this was one of the best openings that I've read so far out of all the Conan stories that I've covered. As I get older, I like stories and movies about people going into ancient tombs and looking for treasure. I like going on that journey with different characters, and there's always an air of mystery to that type of stuff. And it's also just intriguing, and it's a great way to start your story. And Robert E. Howard knows this, but he definitely puts his own spin on it, and it's very Conan because at the end of this little opening section or chapter, Shevatas is trying to get into one of the tombs, and of course a large serpent appears. And I did laugh to myself a little bit because I'm pretty sure there's a serpent in every single story that I've read so far. I do kind of want him to change it up at this point, but I guess that's just his preferred creature for his characters to battle. But Shevatas, he ends up killing the serpent by using a sword with the venom of that same serpent, and it kills the creature. But when he finds the crystal that he was looking for, he gets killed by an unknown force. So that's the setup for this massive story. After that, we're taken to the kingdom of Karaja, and we meet one of the main characters of this story, Princess Yasmela. And her introduction is kind of like a horror story. When she's going to sleep at night, a shapeless shadow visits her and talks to her, and it really freaks her out. So when she talks to her maid tells her basically to pray to Mitra for protection. And Mitra is one of the gods in this Conan universe, this Hyborian age. So Mitra responds to her and says, look, if you go out in the streets, the first man you meet, that's the guy who's going to protect you, and you should put him in charge of your kingdom. So she goes out, and of course she runs into Conan. Conan is such a cool character. I love how Robert E. Howard writes him. I like that he's very suspicious of her right away. He doesn't just help her just because she's a pretty girl. He does go along with her, but I like the little subtle things in the writing where he sits down, but he's leaning against a wall so he could see everybody in the room and see if there are any intruders, because he just doesn't trust anyone. He's been on a lot of adventures, so he knows the deal at this point. But yeah, as epic as this story is, these little quiet moments with this Yasmela character are really compelling because there's this otherworldly entity that's visiting her and basically harassing her. Yasmela wants Conan to kind of look after her at night. Conan really isn't afraid of stuff like that, which is very interesting and compelling, like I said, because he's just a guy. He doesn't have any special powers. He's not a sorcerer. And I like that she's immediately attracted to him because he doesn't really treat her in a phony way because she's royalty. He kind of tells her the truth about what's going on and what she should do. No other man has ever really talked to her that way before, so they do have a unique chemistry throughout this story. There's also some really great writing at this point in the story because Yasmela asks Conan if he's afraid of anything, and he says yes, and I'm thinking he's going to say something like, I'm afraid of running out of beer. I didn't know what he was going to say, but Robert E. Howard has the perfect response. He's afraid of being cursed by the gods, and I guess that's the only thing that he cares about. I guess Crom is his god, but other than that, Conan's not going to be afraid of any weird weird entities coming into the bedroom at night. So it just makes him more of a badass, and it's the perfect response. And I like that the stories change drastically, but Conan's characterization always stays the same. This book doesn't have a huge amount of characters in it, but there are some other interesting guys like Count Thespidus, who's kind of like a more pampered soldier compared to obviously Conan and the rest of the generals. And he is not down with Conan leading the army that they're putting together. Basically, what Yasmela says goes because she's the princess. And then we also have General Amalric, who is also a little unsure of Conan, but he still follows him into battle. Conan leads the Karajan army to the Well of Altaku, and that's where a desert sorcerer known as Natok is gathering his army. But Conan's pretty prepared because with the help of Amalric, he has 3,000 mercenaries on his side. And one of the scariest and most epic parts of this is when the enemies are coming towards them in the desert, and all they see is this fog coming towards them. And then out of the fog is all the soldiers of Natok. So this is when everything kicks into high gear. It's really action-packed. It's a huge battle. And I've read some of the battles in other Conan stories, but the stories are usually take place when the battle is just ending, like in the Scarlet Citadel. And this one is unique because not only do we get Conan as a commander of an army, we get to see him actually fight with his soldiers. And it's basically just a huge war book at this point, which was fun to read. Conan doesn't do much fighting in the beginning, but then towards the end, he has a couple one-on-one battles, which were pretty cool. First with a prince of Stygia, who he basically just stabs a bunch of times until he dies. And then finally, at the end, he confronts Natok, who is Thuga Khotan, the sorcerer from the beginning of the story with Shevatas. And Shevatas was disturbing his tomb. So I guess the spirit of Khotan rose again from that situation. Now he's fighting Conan. I don't know if because he's a sorcerer, he has superhuman strength or anything. It's not really described that much. He throws a snake at Conan. He throws a scorpion at him. I don't know if he's conjuring up these things from magic or just picking them up in the sand in the desert. But Conan bests him as well and ends up throwing a sword right through his heart. And that's the one thing I'll say about these stories. The action is really great and it ramps up. There's a nice rising action, but then I do feel like Conan kills the enemies pretty quickly. There's never really that much of a struggle. And I don't know if this is Robert E. Howard's weakness at all, but he does tend to end these fight scenes pretty quickly, at least from what I've read so far. And then the actual story ends pretty quickly as well. Yasmela is just holding on to Conan, probably scared out of her mind. She just wants him to be with her forever. Conan's probably going to let her go and get back to whatever else he has planned. He's a traveler, so he's definitely going to leave her. But yeah, she's very smitten with him because not only did Mitra tell her that the first person she meets on the streets is going to help her, but he actually overcame this sorcerer, commands her army, and does a really great job, even though so many people died. But hey, they won in the end, so that's got to count for something. But yeah, I really like this story. I'd put it up there with the Tower of the Elephant and Scarlet Citadel as one of my favorites so far. It's going to take a lot to top this one, definitely, and I highly recommend it. You don't really have to read these stories in order. I've said that in some of my other videos on Conan. So you can really just dive into any of them. But I'm reading it out of the Coming of Conan the Cimmerian novel. So this is the 7th story in that book. So yeah, check this one out, Black Colossus. Really good read. Please be sure to like and subscribe if you're enjoying this content, and thanks for watching. Hey everyone, it's Ron here with a quick announcement. When I started this channel, I was reading and reviewing the Dune books and other sci-fi related material, and most of you might not know that I'm also a musician. So when I was reading these sci-fi books, I started to get inspired and decided to make my own soundtrack to use for my videos, and now I'm excited to tell you all about the first volume in the Ron Reviews original soundtrack collection. This album includes the first 17 tracks featured on my channel, and it's available now exclusively on Bandcamp. Be sure to check the description of this video for the link to the album. Thanks so much for the support so far. I know I'm just starting out, but I hope you're having as much fun as I am. So check out the original soundtrack Volume 1 on Bandcamp. This music is great if you want something moody and atmospheric to listen to while you're reading some science fiction. I think you're going to love it. Thanks.